Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming today. My name is Kendra Mirasol. I am the president and co-owner of EuRA Global Services, a US-based destination services provider who also offers comprehensive global cultural training and language training. I'm very excited to say that this is my 5th annual EuRA conference, and I'm honored to be leading today's session called KISS Your Client, Continuous Improvement in DSP Delivery. For those of you that who sat a little bit further in front of the room, there are sorts of chocolate kisses from the US, and there is also a handout at everybody's seats that we'll be working with later on in the session when we do our KISS exercise. No, that's not what you think it is, although we do have a panel of subject matter experts in kissing, I'm sure. Wanted to thank the EuRA board, Tad and Dom, and the help of Peggy Love, my team back in the US who helped with this idea, as well as my business partner, Rob Burns, to give me the opportunity to do this today. I'm pleased to announce that we have a prestigious panel of subject matter experts that I have said, some of whom are very familiar and been with EuRA for a long time, others who are quite new to EuRA. Also, they represent multiple regions across the globe, so I think this will give us a very good, broad perspective on improving our DSP services across the globe. I did want to share with you how this session came to be. What is this all about, KISS Your Client? And the brainstorm, or the brainchild, I guess, was really threefold. First of all, as I said, it's the 5th EuRA Congress that I've been to, and I have been incredibly impressed with the amount of collaboration, the amount of sharing of information, the amount of transparency that occurs in conversations here at the Congress, but also that continues afterwards. So I've had deep discussions with all of our panelist members, along with many of you in the audience, and it really was my opportunity, I felt, to give back what I had learned. I came the first time 5 years ago, scared to death, didn't know anybody here, and this has just brought me a long way in my career, my business, and the networking. So, and I appreciate also the opportunity that these men have to give back their learnings as well, so we can share with them, because they've had a lot of success in terms of positive financial outcomes for their companies, operational outcomes, and organizational company change. The second thing is EuRA Global Services went through the EuRA Global Quality Seal, the EGQS, recertification about a year ago. The first time was tough, right? It was more about establishing processes, and the recertification process focused more on continuous improvement of those processes. And even though we thought maybe the second time around wouldn't be quite as strenuous, my team members were standing in the lobby quite jittery. And then when their auditor came in that day, they became even more jittery. This man, the auditor, was a very imposing fellow. He's about 2 meters tall. He had a black leather jacket on, black pants, black boots, snake belt. And I swear to God, when he walked into the door, that he had a handcuff on his briefcase. It was so scary, but he was there from 7:55 to 5:30 in the afternoon. Typical Americans, we worked through the lunch, and again, we talked a lot about improving and improving our services. So the third piece of this brainstorm of why this session came to be was that continuous improvement there's a number of vocabulary pieces. You've probably heard Kaizen, you've heard black belt, you've ISO 9001, agile, lean technology, and so forth. So our company has established a different vocabulary. So for all of these reasons, we felt it would be a good idea to bring the continuous improvement exercise to you. And in particular, our auditor, as tough as he was, came to us with this KISS exercise. And KISS, sometimes is keep it simple, stupid, right? How many have heard of that, keep it simple, stupid? Anyone? Yeah. So his KISS was a little bit different, but I like the connection to this being a very simple framework, because really what's implementable? You have to have something very simple. we've all seen the matrices of strategic management. They're so complicated, and we never really finish them. So this is K. What do we keep doing? I. What do we improve? S. What do we start doing? And another S. What should we stop doing? So therein lies the concept of KISS. So I would like you to think a little bit during the session about your own businesses, your own client relationships, your supplier partnerships. Heck, why not? What about your relationships at home? How can you KISS and improve these? Because at the end of the session, we do want you to have some conversations amongst yourselves and try to just go through your piece of the grid. So watch for that. So at this point, I would like to introduce everybody. Here's our agenda. We'll talk about continuous improvement efforts for everybody and do the KISS exercise. And so I'm going to join our panelists here and let them introduce each other to you. And Raman, I think I'll start with you. Please tell us a little bit about your relocation experience, your background, and maybe specific background in continuous improvement.
Well, I'm Raman. Hello, everybody. I'm Raman. I'm from Formula Group in India. And, well, I've been in the relocation industry since 2004. And I think we've really come a long way. We've learned so much from the EuRAs, from the ERCs, and from all the events we attend, all the people we meet. And I think the biggest learning really triggered in when we went for our EuRA Global Quality Seal, and we realized that we were not really working in a very structured manner. We had process in our minds, in our thoughts, but it was not documented. It was not really put in a way where we could actually streamline people across the board, across the diverse cities where our people work, which is India, which is a diverse country. Everybody speaks a different language, but the challenge and the mission we had was to have a McDonald's model where a burger tastes the same everywhere. So therefore, the service experience of a client should be everywhere in any city they go to in India. So I think getting on board and getting the quality seal really changed the way we do things. We've got a manual in place. We've got processes in place. We've been through a renewal process, and I think the way we look at things, the way the people in our organization look at things, changed completely.
Big change. Okay, thank you, Raman. And Raman is based in Delhi, in India, covering India, yeah?
Right.
Okay. Alistair, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alistair Murray. I'm with a company called Relocation Support Services in the UK. I've been in the relocation industry now for 10 years. And from a continuous improvement perspective, I've been through the EuRA Quality Seal process with 2 separate companies and been through the recertification process within the last 6 months. And I would say the thing that I've learned the most is a slightly different approach we've taken recently, where previously I think the process has been very much the remit and the domain of the operations manager, and they've been very proud of what they've done, but they've kind of kept their arms around everything that's changed and evolved in the company, whereas this time we've made sure that it's more collaborative. So everybody in the company has been involved in the process. So there's 20 of us in total in the organization, and everybody's been playing their part. So we've asked for feedback and ideas from everybody, right from the mission statement of the company through to the quality management processes, and getting as much feedback, because I think there's some talents and some great ideas at all levels of the organization. So that's been the big change for us, which I think has been successful.
Good, okay. All right, Scott, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Carroll. I'm from San Diego, California. Work and have lead as president and CEO of Odyssey Relocation Management. We are a growing mid-size third-party relocation company based in California. Most of our clients are U.S. headquartered, and about 25% of our business is outside the U.S. From my experience in the industry, it's been about 15 years. It's kind of hard to, I was just thinking that as these gentlemen were talking about their years of experience, I'm like, well, how did this happen so quickly? So I'm delighted to be here and to share our experiences around this KISS exercise later this morning.
Good. All right, and then we have Stuart McAllister.
Morning, everyone. I'm Stuart McAllister. I founded Into Relocation in Budapest, Hungary 15 years ago. Provide DSP services and immigration compliance across 23 countries in Central Eastern Europe, a little bit of Central Asia. We first certified for EGQS in 2014 and recertified for the first time last year. It's a big achievement for us. Our largest project to date was relocating over 300 individuals into a rural location in Hungary for a major automotive firm where there was no housing market, no schooling, and we had to deliver everything in German, which I do not speak.
Ja, wunderbar.
Jawohl.
Gut gemacht.
I think I have no memory and very little conscience. So
Even on the introduction, apparently.
yeah, no, and I'd written, no, seriously, it was just in case I forget who I am. So I've written this stuff down. So prior to going through the EGQS program, we did monitor quality via customer evaluations, and of course, many of our RMC partners were already monitoring our service delivery via their own quality standards. We just didn't do a lot with the data that we received. There was no formality to our own desire to improve the business. It was very much a reactive environment. If a client or partner needed us to expand our service scope or our geographic coverage, we would assess the profitability of the request and then work on a solution if appropriate. There was very little sense of stepping back to look at the big picture of where interrelocation was going. That was all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks. All right. Well, we'll start out, I think, speaking with Alistair first, because several of us have gone through that recertification process. You said that was fairly recent. So in that process, I'm just curious, what jumped out as you were looking at all these opportunities to improve? What did you discover?
Okay. Well, first, I think I should probably start by just saying, when you approached me and said you want me to talk about kissing my clients, I was shocked. I was appalled.
It really does work.
I was appalled at the idea. And mainly I was thinking, how did you find out? How did you know? It's meant to be confidential. But then I realized it's not literally, it's not in that sense. We're talking about continuous improvement, and we're discussing how, in conjunction with the quality seal, there have been certain things that have leaped out that we think we need to evolve and adapt the process for the benefit of our clients. So, as I said earlier, we did take a very collaborative approach to the recertification process. We're asking everybody for their opinions, as well as running through the manual in the correct order. And one thing that came out the back of a couple of very interesting discussions recently with RMCs and direct clients is we were fortunate enough to be approached and say, we have RMCs would tell us we have some new business for you. We implemented a new direct client, and the question they were asking was, can you prove that if volume goes up, service quality won't go down? And it was an interesting conversation because I would try and say, yeah, no problem at all, that'll be absolutely fine. But I was thinking, actually, I would like to give you a kiss at the moment. And they need more than that. So I think that process has changed. There's an element of trust, there's an element of relationships, but part of our quality manual process was to say, can we actually quantify what is a quality process in terms of productivity and activity? So historically, what we've done as part of our operating system is we have a graph that shows every consultant in our industry, in our business, and how many files they're working on. And we could show that, and people said that was fine.
Excuse me, those are the consultants in the office.
Exactly.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, so that shows their caseload and their level of productivity. We've always had an idea in mind of the optimum number of files that they can work on so that they're efficient before it then becomes the possibility that responsiveness can be put at risk just because of the sheer volume. So we had a number in mind, but again, through talking to everybody in the organization, speaking through the quality seal process, we soon realized that I think that was not necessarily fit for purpose anymore because things in the UK are changing for a number of different reasons. So historically, we'd look at our consultants in the office and say they're managing a home finding file, and they were relatively similar in the types of services, the types of packages. But now we're seeing, for a number of different reasons, that's changing. So primarily, I think at the moment, there's a huge amount of uncertainty in the UK. I'm sure if you're not from the UK, you're probably bored of hearing people talk about Brexit, and everyone appreciates that we've all made a terrible decision, but we just need to get on with it and actually decide how it's going to affect them. So there's an awful lot of uncertainty within the UK, and that, whilst we're not seeing a decline in the total number of initiations and files, we're definitely seeing a change in the type of files that we are being initiated on. So it's lighter packages, it's unaccompanied home search, and so all these different policies and packages now need to be factored in when we're considering what is that optimum level of different files that our consultants are working on.
Right.
So we spent a huge amount of time, like I say, as a team with everybody in the organization, trying to put a weight to each different type of package and file that they're working on, so that we then know, firstly, that it's consistent, that everyone in the organization is working on the same quantity of work, but also that we can then plan for the future. So we're looking, we had a huge exhaustive list of key data points throughout the process, and have now used that and the weighting of each different file to look at actually what is productive and what is a quality optimum level of files before, like I say, you might reach that tipping point and reach an area where service could suffer.
So this is exactly what I love about this organization, because we have the same issue of the changes of the files.
Right.
And right now we're kind of like, well, we know this, client A is just having a load and a little more troublesome, and client B is, these are easy files. So, okay, you said the measurement and so forth. Did you test this? Did you share that with the client that was to be? And,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of testing that could be done kind of behind the scenes. So we could look at the caseload at any particular time, look at all our active files and actually go through them and say, how are we going to define that level of activity? So we may have been initiated on a service, but deciding you may be still waiting for a visa, they may not be coming for a couple of months, and that waiting needs to be factored in when we're looking at the overall caseload. So lots of testing behind the scenes. There was a fair number of files that we could say were actually on hold, and then looking at the time it takes to complete that service from start to finish with every data point in between.
Just by show of hands, do people weight their caseloads in that way? I'm just curious, because that would be a continuous improvement piece for our organization. Okay, good. Technology-wise, or any other continuous improvements effort that did come out of it that was slightly different than that?
So then, we could go back to our clients. We could talk with confidence about how we do measure productivity and activity. I think what would be great for us in terms of taking that to the next level and evolving that process even further is looking at, so we have our operating system, but we also work with Salesforce as well, just for
Salesforce.com.
yes, yeah, just with prospective clients. So we're now trying to factor that into the process as well, and say if we have a certain number of prospects, we know our conversion rate, we know roughly what the volume will be, then we're planning again one step ahead to say volume will hopefully increase at this point, and that will help us with recruitment and managing the team as a whole.
Good, okay. That's very insightful, and I can't wait to have further discussions how we can do that and take that learning back home. So good. Okay, well, I think we'll switch over to Stuart for an inter-relo, and tell us a little bit about your prior experience with the EGQS, and what your case is. A little different than Alistair's, which is assessing files in the office.
Well, all right. Let me start by saying that while I'm a great advocate of the EuRA Global Quality Seal as a quality system, it's not just because I'm on the board and I have to say that, just having the seal in itself is really not a guarantee, in my opinion, of being a great service provider. I think the essence of any great relocation company still comes from the people who do all the hard work every day. And if I didn't have an amazing and talented staff, there wouldn't be any point in improving the processes. It wouldn't make the business any better. What we found the EGQS program does, and I shouldn't have folded this piece of paper, I'm now realizing, is to force an organization like ours to build a much more coherent structure for the business, to implement a whole range of checks and balances that together really help us to regulate both how we react to circumstance and also how we plan ahead and work to improve. The biggest practical advantage to the Global Quality Seal for us was the requirement to put together this range of policies that we pretty much were always referred to whenever we were asked to complete an RFP. I used to live in fear of opening one of those huge RFP packs and knowing that I was going to have many hours of documentation to put together. Now, with some minor exceptions, I know that everything that will be asked of us is already contained within our quality manual. If it isn't, and occasionally it's not, we actually assess what we've been asked to add, and we might even build that into our policy system, quality system for the future. Bless you.
Okay, good. So you've had the quality seal since 2014, right?
2014, that's right.
And when we were talking in preparation for the panel, I recall your issue that you attacked in the recertification process was just about evaluations from customers or assignees or transferees, and in particular the negative ones. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what difference that made in when you looked at continuous improvement for evaluations? What difference did that make to your organization?
Yeah. I was going to talk about how painful it was first, but I've
How painful was it?
Can I talk about
How
pain?
How painful was it for you? Kissing is not painful, but tell us a little bit about the...
Talk to my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, setting it up initially certainly was a painful process for us. We had to bring together all these disparate elements of policy and procedure that we'd been building over 10 years of operating a business and try and put it into one coherent single manual. If I look back, though, at the time we've saved since then, simply in terms of the paperwork, or rather lack of additional paperwork that's required when we complete an RFP, I know the time and energy was certainly worth it. And again in 2016, this is my favorite bit, when we first recertified, there were significant new elements to the quality standard that we had to add. And yes, took a lot of additional time. How delighted was I then when at a certain major RMC conference last year, I was told that their partners would have to implement a risk management policy by 2018. A slightly smug look on my face. I could confirm that we'd already gone through that process earlier in the year as a part of the EGQS recertification. From a compliance point of view, it's certainly fair to say that EGQS is ahead of the game. The key area, thank you, now here we go.
Yeah. No, that's good to note, because the audience may or may not know that the EGQS process, it does change. They add elements, or potentially maybe they will subtract elements in the future too, to address the latest trends, and compliance was a big one. So I know assessing risk was one of them.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, that was the great advantage. EGQS mirrors ISO 9001. In fact, I'm told that if you do both certifications in parallel, there's only a 20% difference between the two. And the advantage we had was that ISO 9001 required risk management to be implemented by a deadline of 2018. And our designer for our quality standard said, no, we'll do that from 2016, that's fine.
Right.
So
getting to the other issue that you discovered, which was the evaluations coming back, and you're thinking about continuously improving your service, right? So
right. Thank you,
tell us
Kendra.
about that. Yeah.
The key area one of the key areas that has to be addressed as part of global quality seal development is the subject of evaluation and complaint management. I must admit, to this day, whenever an evaluation email lands in my inbox, there's always that kind of little pang of fear that the evaluation is going to be negative. Happily, it's pretty rare that that's the case anymore, but that we do receive negative feedback. But we've learned to treat it as a learning experience rather than some form of medieval torture. Rather than seeing the process the Global Quality Seal asks us to complete as pure admin, where we document what we do and then duly present it to an auditor every 2 years, we decided to actually try to improve our business model as well. I live in Hungary, and for historical reasons, it's quite difficult there for employees to address negative feedback with an open and constructive mindset. My colleagues and I knew that we had to work on this and use feedback, both positive and negative, as a tool. We arrived at some key conclusions that we now try to both if we receive a negative evaluation and also as a means to actively avoid getting one. And here's my patented guide. So 1, you can't make all of the people happy all of the time. I'm going to say that again. You can't make all of the people happy all of the time, so don't try. But negative feedback should not come as a surprise. We concluded that in theory, we should always know if an assignee is dissatisfied because we've actually taken the time to ask them and also addressed any dissatisfaction that comes up during the process. Number two, if we regularly check if the customer is happy during the time we work with them, and they keep telling us they are, it's really hard for them later on to then give us a negative evaluation. Number three is escalate, escalate, escalate. If our consultants know or at least feel that an assignee is unhappy, they collaborate with each other and with their managers and with our partners to decide how to address the situation and bring the assignee back on track. It won't always work, but using all the resources and experience at our disposal, we can at least say that we did our best to make a less than perfect situation better. And finally, number four, if someone takes the time to write negative feedback, it means they feel passionately about the service they received. Even if we don't agree with their opinion, they feel the way they do for a reason. What reason is that? How could we have handled the person in such a way that they would not have felt left down, even if we feel that the service we delivered was good? Oh, hang on. Oh, yeah, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. We get a bad evaluation. The first and most important step is to address it, but to do so with an open mind. I absolutely don't assume that we're at fault. But likewise, I don't immediately jump to the conclusion that the assignee is wrong, or worse, an idiot. Let me share a couple of recent examples of negative feedback where we had not, in essence, done anything wrong. The first one was an assignee complained that they could find lots of properties online within their budget, and we could not. You've all been there, right? Yep. In Budapest, there are lots of shopfront websites that offer what appear to be great deals, but in fact, those properties are rarely actually available. It would have been important for us to take the time to explain this to the assignee, and if they express doubt in our expertise, actually challenge them. Offering that they call and check on the properties we've already pre-checked for them, just so that they actually see that we are advocating for their interests. And the second case is an assignee who complained that we do not do things that, in fact, sadly, he was responsible for. On the one hand, I'm not concerned if the complaint does not relate to our services, but it is worth addressing, and we did address it, that the assignee was not clear that these elements of the service delivery were not something that we could complete. So he didn't realize, and we hadn't made that clear enough for him, that this isn't our job. I think in conclusion, I would definitely say that we've had less negative feedback since we implemented the processes I've mentioned as part of the EGQS quality program. What is perhaps more important is a wider sense of everyone asking themselves if what they're doing is the best and cooperating with each other, their managers, and the RMCs that we work with to ensure that we have the best chance of receiving positive feedback and avoiding those all-critical complaints.
I hear two succinct takeaways from me. One is, it seems like you educated or came to the conclusion that there's a service complaint, and then there are service failures. And it was very important for you to understand the difference. Sometimes things are out of our control, and sometimes things are. And I think separating those two is helpful, especially when you're talking amongst your colleagues in the office. Because the other thing I heard was, from an org culture standpoint, nobody wants to feel like, oh, it's my fault. They don't want to feel that you're critiquing or you're critical of them. So, and I'm just curious too, from your region, the Eastern European region, did you, and you yourself are, from the West, right? So was there any kind of different approach in terms of your, staff, as how they accepted criticism in that way, in those negative evals?
A lot of it had to come down to us as managers and say, like, something goes wrong, you get a bad evaluation. Now, my first reaction is, it's very, very easy to get angry. count to 10, look at the whole thing, and then say, obviously, RMCs might ask us to do a 5-why evaluation, which I still don't understand, despite years of trying. So in a more simple form, I would say, like, look, right, tell me what happened. Tell me your story. How do you feel about it? And then we sit down and go, right, what was the situation? For me, the biggest one for me, the biggest kind of eureka moment was the surprise concept. That if an evaluation comes in and it's negative and we've not seen it coming, I'm like, how can that be? And it had never occurred to me before.
Right.
You get a bad evaluation, what happened? Oh, this, that, and the other. Right, did we escalate? Did we do something about it? Did we engage with our partners? Did we talk to the client?
Did you kiss the client?
Well, right. I mean, whether if it's but if it's HR, and I mean, I've literally gone to HR and said, we're having some terrible trouble with this assignee, and they were just like, and suddenly we had a joint catharsis session where they were like going, you're having problems with him. You have to deal with him for like 3 months. I have to deal with him every day. And suddenly, and they've said, if he gives you a bad evaluation, trust me, it's cool. We still love you. We know that you do a great job. Okay, but even then it was like, right, is there a way that we can make this lady or gentleman happier? And then it's a collaborative approach. And then when the final evaluation does come in and it's not good, or by the way, it might be middling, and you, instead of having a middling evaluation where you're told, middling, you're actually told, that's brilliant, relative to expectation.
Right. Good. So those are, both of Alistair's and Stuart's cases are a little more on, general process, and although you gave a couple of specific examples, I know when we turn to Raman, I believe, when we talked about our preparation for the session, there was a very specific escalation that came to be. You hadn't even heard about the KISS exercise or anything before, but then tell us a little bit about your situation.
I'll be honest, I'm supposed to be a storyteller here, and that's what I will be, actually.
That's right.
While all this was unfolding in US, in a different world, where the KISS the client concept was happening or being created or being conceptualized, in a land far beyond, with a beautiful land of colors and snake charmers, it was me sitting in the office, and there was another story unfolding on the background, and this was a very simple home search case where home search is being finalized, and the term sheet is finalized, the rentals, the terms, conditions, everything is sent. It's in the evening, so the term sheet has to be signed the following day. So the expat is going to sleep over it, his HR is going to look at it, he's approved it, and everything is done. So he goes out for drinks in the evening to a bar or to an expat club, and he's interacting and having drinks with the expat, and he meets a friend there who says, hey, where are you moving into? He says, I'm moving into this condominium. He says, well, I live there too. So, oh, great, when did you move in? 2 months ago. And as always, they exchange notes and they exchange the rentals which they're paying. The guy said, I've got this place for an amazing $3,500 US. He says, you crazy? I just moved in 2 months ago and I've paid 30% less. And boom. So I was sleeping a peaceful sleep. She was awake maybe somewhere. And so while she was awake and while I was sleeping, she was maybe sending us emails of KISS, the client concept. And I go to office in the morning and I see that, whoa, there's an escalation. So I have our account managers and team saying that, well, we screwed up. We depended on one broker for that expat neighborhood to give us a rental, and we never benchmarked it with another broker, and we've gone ahead and we've given the term sheet, and we have an email from the HR there saying that, but prevailing rents are much lower. Well, anyways, that was an escalation. We sorted it out. We stepped in. The account manager stepped in. But I get this email which said, kiss the client. I said, in a conservative land, somebody's telling me to kiss the client. Hey, not done. But anyways, when I opened the form, and the form which you have on your table, and I saw it, I said, this is incredible. This is something we need to do quickly. So we called our teams in, and we said, guys, we're going to do a KISS exercise. So of course they were scandalized for a bit, but they saw the tone in my voice. I was not a very happy man, and they realized this is a different kind of kissing session which is going to happen, not really the kiss session. So I got them in. I said, guys, this is the escalation. A higher rent was quoted. Bad things happened. So what is it we need to do? We need to go over the KISS exercise. So of course, for the K, What do we need to keep doing? There was very little we need to keep doing in this case. We needed more to look at the I, which is how to improvise things, what to improvise. So we started noting things down. We realized that there was a lot of learning here. We realized that we needed to improvise, firstly, on the kind of information which was being fed to us, right? We needed to improvise on a broker network to ensure that we are not depending on one broker. We needed to improvise on our processes and the kind of the way we approach a relationship with our vendor partners, the way RMCs approach us as a vendor partner. And most important, we realized that technology has a play in this too. And going back a little bit, post we got the EGQS, we actually developed an entire technology based on that, which actually manages our entire work across 8 locations in India in a very consistent manner. So we realized that there is an area of improvisation in the technology too. So of course we had to, going to the stop, we had to stop dealing with one broker, we had to stop trusting information coming in and so on. But I'll move to the start. That was the exciting part, because we realized that there were so many things we could start doing. We ensured that we firstly put in a strict policy in place that we will, for every expat neighborhood in any city we deal with, we will have a minimum of 2 broker partners in place. So we got that done. We realized that in spite of that, we cannot trust the information they give us. So we actually started doing a monthly dipstick survey in the expat neighborhoods to kind of go and find out what the rentals were directly ourselves through online or through whatever. So we have our own surveys in place so that we are able to benchmark what was being thrown at us. We realized that we really needed to have a very strict vendor partner or a broker partner agreement in place, which was very critical, which had an SLA filled in there, so that we went across all our partners, made them sign agreements. We made that part of our improvisation in a manual, where agreements had to be in place, SLAs had to be in place, commitment towards ethical practices and responsibility, accountability was there for our vendor partners too. The way we sign for our partners, for the RMCs we work with, or all of us work with. So I think the agreement was a major thing. And then we realized we have technology in place, and why the hell are we not using technology to do things for us? So we actually called the IT team, and we triggered the start of, so we created a panel for a broker login, for a vendor partner login. So now our partners log into our panel, they load the properties they have to load in there. Our technology then scans the properties. So they crunch the rental numbers, and we're able to actually get a rental trend analysis or a rental trend matrix chart for the past 6 months, for the past 12 months, for the past 18 months. So we know how the rent is moving, in which direction, in various neighborhoods. And I think I was one of the sessions yesterday where they said that the RMCs too, or a lot of corporates too, are sometimes way off the budget they set for their clients. So we actually had a case where a client came in saying that this is my budget, I want to stay in this neighborhood. We actually had to write back to the HR saying that, but this neighborhood is double the rent. It's not the budget you've given them, and it's not going to fit in. So now we're able to showcase through this exercise of the what the technology throws at us. We're able to share that with our partners or our HRs or the RMCs that, see, this is the rental matrix for the last 12 months. And it's a much more trustworthy data, so kindly budget accordingly. So there was a lot of things I think we started doing because of that, and we actually put that in our EGQS. We actually shared the KISS exercise with the client eventually. Much later, we walked and said, this is what we've done. This is why it happened. This is why it will not happen again, and this is a long-term solution for it. Yes.
They were pleased that
They were very happy with the proactive approach we took. While the escalation had got over, we never slept over it. We didn't allow the fact that it might not happen again. But we actually went deeper into it. We actually conducted the KISS session. We did it internally, and then we came with action points, and then we implemented the action points, and then we showcased to the client that this is the KISS exercise we did, and they're still our client.
Okay, that's a good outcome, right? Good, thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm going to turn next to one of our U.S. partners here, Scott Carroll with Odyssey Relocation. Our case was a little different as well, and the handouts that you have on the KISS grid, you see up on the screen, there are 4 questions, but we had a bit of an issue between us, and so we kind of did our KISS session, you did yours. Tell us a little bit about how we evolved to this.
So about a year and a half ago, Kendra and I had the opportunity to speak, and I'll give you a little bit of background around how this came around. The framework that you guys have been hearing about really can apply to any time of continuous process improvement, whether it's with a customer, internal customer, external customer, or supply chain partners. And so in our situation, Kendra's organization is our top performing DSP partner. And what was occurring inside of our company in recurring weekly huddles, where our operations team comes together to talk about things that are working, noise, just kind of communicate in general, is there was some noise that was brewing around the relationship. And what was interesting is there was no indication of challenge coming from our objective data from the QA. We had very happy transferees. The data proved it. We had, where we share corporate clients, we had really happy, I hate using the word happy, but we had very pleased and satisfied corporate clients. The engagement was working really well. So if you're just looking across a straight data line, it would be all thumbs up. But week after week, some of the same noise kept coming and creeping into the ops huddles. And when we dug a little deeper, it really existed at the ops management level. So our organization, we have very passionate people, very experienced people. We really don't have any rookies on our team in the ops management and leadership roles. And essentially, probably the easiest way to think about it was we had really high-performing, passionate, experienced people that were starting to agitate one another. And it wasn't around transferees. It wasn't necessarily specific to an authorization process, an escalation process. But nobody could really put their finger on what it was. And so as a leader, as I'm hearing some of this noise come up, like, all right, we have people that aren't talking to one another? Are they just emailing? Or are they talking and can't quite communicate what the problem is? And so as this escalated up, the data didn't identify the problem, and really all we had were symptoms. And so it began to feel like, for those of you that walk or run, I'll use an analogy, it felt like there were people running and they weren't stopping to remove the pebble out of their shoe, right? And so keep doing that, and the blister turns into something much worse. And so the annoyances we thought were really due to professional opinion, potentially different types of expectations around response time. But this was between ops managers, right? Not between our consultants who were working with their field consultants to deliver great quality. So when we first reached out and connected, Kendra's solution was to share what the KISS exercise. It was something that wasn't necessarily used within our organization. We've certainly used continual improvement framework before, but that's essentially kind of the solution that developed.
Yeah.
Or that was really the situation that was developing.
Right, the lay of the land. So do you remember going through that exercise?
I do. It was interesting. She sent the exercise over, and I probably maybe didn't vocalize, but I'm like, oh, KISS, that really awesome. So we're going to try something unique and new. Introduced it to our team and gave them assignment. Hey, we're going to get on the phone with IOR and essentially your peers, but we're going to work through this framework up here. And IOR is going to literally the framework has these 4 quadrants, but really your customer side and your side. So really there's 8 quadrants, right? So you take each category and each partner comes to the table with their version. And so consistent with what Tony Chapman told us yesterday, everyone wants to tell their story. So my team was excited, right? Because they thought they were now going to have an audience where our supply chain partner, a great partner, was going to be on the phone, and our team was going to be able to tell them, how things were going to change, right? I mean, isn't that how we operate, right? People are like, I want it my way. So we all got on the phone and
so did we at the same time, right? So these are going on simultaneously.
Yeah. So I think as we went down each element. We talked about kind of the 3 or 4 bullets that IOR had proposed and the 3 or 4 bullets that Odyssey proposed. And the first category was pretty easy, right? Because everyone put the layups and the easy ones up there on the what to keep doing, right? Those are easy. And that's really comforting to talk about, right? So there was no discomfort. There wasn't any cultural differences between our teams. But hey, let's keep doing. I think everyone had a check mark. When we got to the improved category, there were a few things on both sides of the table, but really no considerable, huge barriers to cross over. It was at the first S where I think some of the ahas came out and where the passion started to come out from some of the people who were describing, because it was really where they wanted to share some of their ideas, and I think that's, and I don't know if, Kendra, if your experience was on really the first, hey, what can we stop doing?
Very similar. The keep was good. The improve was, tweaking. Honestly, I had to clean up my document that we did internally, went to share with him in a really big way, because we had that private huddle on our side, and there was a lot of complaints, and I remember sharing it with my business partner, Rob Burns, and he's like, you can't send these things over to the client. And I'm like, okay, I need to sanitize it a little bit. But that's where, I don't remember particularly if it's a start or a stop, but that's where that's where we
sanitized ours a little bit too. But here's really, I think, where one of the clear outcomes comes. So if you're thinking of using this, it depends upon who you're doing it with. An internal team, right? But what was a clear moment of distinction for me, and what I would call some critical qualities that make this work in the exercise, is you've got to have some transparency, right? So for us, we had to have that comfort to be able to say how we really felt, right? Now professionally, right? So that meant our people, and presumably Kendra's folks, had to leave some of their egos at the door, right? We don't care about your years of experience, right? Don't use that as your badge of why you're declaring something should be a certain way, but use that as a foundation for knowledge in the space and a desire to improve, right? And so we checked the egos at the door. We asked folks to really come in with an unbiasedness, right? Hey, you guys are the one that are complaining, and as a leader in the organization, my attitude was you're engaging leadership time on both companies, presumably because you guys can't figure it out yourselves, right? So let's help escalate this, and let's help get some kind of a solution. And so that's where the honesty came into play, and I think everyone was respectful of what was shared. Clearly, there needed to be a little bit of leadership framework in terms of making sure kind of what was said was fair, right, and fair balance, and really aligned to what both companies were trying to accomplish, which is providing an amazing relocation experience for our corporate client, for the assignees, but doing it in a way that we can continue to work together, right? I think we've all seen on the athletic field amazing athletes, right? Amazing athletes, and then they get traded. You're like, oh my gosh, why would they trade so-and-so? There's a football player, Terrell Owens, who scored more American touchdowns, and but he kept getting traded from team to team to team because of his off-the-field and locker room conduct. He was just difficult to work in the team environment. And so I don't think we had any Terrell Owens on our team.
No, but I would say, just following the sports analogy, in a way on that actual call that we had, Scott and I sort of had the black and white referee shirts on.
A little bit.
In a bit, and we definitely had to set the scene for our teams. And they saw, I think, that we had, I would just call it an authentic, real, transparent, going back to that introduction of the session. It's like it's an authentic relationship where you can say, diplomatically and professionally what's going on. So I would agree, it definitely takes leadership around this. I wouldn't just say, hey, everybody, go start the KISS exercise, at home with all your clients, or back at the office with all your clients. There needs to be some framework around it.
Yeah. So a couple other critical points that we saw in hindsight now of doing this, and we've done this with a couple other supply chain partners. We've done this exercise with a few clients. Didn't have, the same structure was used. But so there's a discipline, right? So you can kind of, as you go through this, start, stop, improve, and keep. But there's got to be a discipline around documenting it, right? Because you're doing this for change management, right? And so maybe it's not easy to objectify, and particularly in our industry. I mean, we're a service organization; it's people helping people, so it's not always easy to put an absolute data element around this. So the documentation was important, and so then the last piece would be the discipline to follow the steps, to support it and to document, to then push it outward.
And therein lies, I think, the connection, going back, again, I'm not, paid to say the EGQS is awesome, but it really is. It really provides that discipline to structure, and I would love to put this in the next iteration. I mean, it's in our process and documenting it as well, so.
Yeah, the last piece I'll add, and so this is kind of where, if you're thinking of trying to accomplish something like this in your organization or how you would use it, I think Kendra mentioned it earlier, but it's not a technical change management methodology. You don't have to have a bunch of people in the room that understand what Six Sigma is to walk through this. And it's very practical and easy to use without a whole lot of explanation around the framework you're going to use. So very similar to other root cause analysis methodologies, it flushes this out if you've got the right people and you're coming in with kind of an honest approach, a transparent approach, and you're comfortable in doing it openly with whether it's a client. And so it takes a little bit of guts and culturally sensitive alignment if you're dealing with some of those differences to kind of put it out there and say, hey, but I think if structured the right way, we want to improve, and we want to improve the overall outcome because we want this to be better for both organizations and have a better outcome. So that would be my encouragement.
Right. So originally with this session, we had thought there were going to be round tables and that we would have time to do interactive activities and so forth, but with the way the room is set up, it doesn't really lend itself to that. But I do, we've got about 5 minutes left, I believe, and I do want to open it up for questions, from the audience, just so if you have any questions about how to implement, what to do, do you think this works or would work or not in your own organizations? I'd open up the floor now. Anybody? And actually, if you ask a question, this is what we do in our sessions. I'm usually at the head of the conference table. I'm like, okay, and then if we get a question out there, then I usually reward that with a chocolate kiss. So, any questions from the audience?
I just have a
Michelle,
comment.
yeah,
I think
comment.
I like the acronym KISS, and I think it's something simple that could implement it quite often. So I'm looking forward to using it and seeing how simple, is it really that simple? And,
Yeah.
and as you say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So you have to frame it in the right way, especially when you come to the stopping points. I guess that's where everybody had the issues.
So Michelle was saying, just to repeat in case you didn't hear, she said she liked the concept that it was simple. And again, it's kind of that double entendre. KISS, keep it simple, stupid, as we say. But it also stands for those 4 questions. It's much easier to implement, and but also the sensitivity around how to lead that. Easy, but completely structured as well. Thanks.
That actually might have been my first reaction when it first came over is, how can something, oh, she wants her candy.
Yeah, come on.
How could something simple
Oh, wait.
really yield some good results? And the outcome was that it really did, and we're a year or so later, and those issues haven't really risen up. And so that's the exciting part. And we still have demanding customers and passionate people and very experienced people. So it certainly flushed out some of the opportunities for change.
Yeah, change management. Any other comments? Closing remarks?
I think internally, it's a great exercise, but I think where it was most effective, and I can see, is changing the thought process internally of people when they think the KISS way. They're already thinking when something goes wrong that what can I keep doing, what can I improve, what can I stop doing, what can I start doing. I think if you're able to build in that thought process in your teams, you're already half the way there. So when they're in a boardroom doing a KISS exercise, I think they've come with a more KISS thought process.
Right.
I think if you are able to embed it into their minds, I think you have a team which is going to be aligned with your processes, which is thinking processes.
Yeah.
I think it's a great mental alignment tool too, so great.
Yeah, I mean, we were feeling exactly the same. I mean, we as an organization had never even heard of KISS in that sense. But and it was great, Scott, to hear what you were talking about, but you were worried about getting everybody together, and the reaction that people would have, and the potential conflict, and to go into the room with an open mind. We started from the same thing, but in our slightly more Central European way of thinking. Right, we want to improve, but we don't want to get upset about, negative feedback, negative evaluations, and to sort of just like, okay, let's be calm, everything's going to be fine, and look at it in the same way. But it wasn't structured. I mean, and that's been my kind of theme all the way through, that we were kind of bumbling along. We had a successful business, but it was, laying it all together. And this is why when we built this session, that starting with EGQS as a way of forcing you to put things and look at your business on a day-to-day basis. And then the specifics of KISS, which, I mean, it's great that came up in the context of your audit, Kendra, and now, I've learned today. So
Yeah.
I'm just even sat up here, and now I can take it back, and if we have a specific issue, and I have one in mind, that we're going to apply that back in Budapest.
Good. All right, I will let everyone go. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have questions, the panelists will stay up here. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of the conference and keep the ideas flowing.
Thank you.